Thanks for tuning in to the first round of Localization Practicum presentations. This year, translation and localization management students formed small teams of 3 to 5 students and partnered with 1 or 2 nonprofit organizations to translate as much content as possible into the 8 languages that we offer here at the Institute. As we'll see, frequently the limiting factor was the bandwidth of the volunteer translators who worked on these projects, many of which came from the Translation Practicum course and other translation students here at the Institute. There are also some volunteer translators that participated from other schools and even professional translators who wanted to give back. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank TLM students for their dedication to helping these organizations expand their markets beyond their original reach. So first up, Tentico, Adam, Cooper, Hyben, and Yanan will discuss the localization projects they completed for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, an organization that addresses the public health crisis of pornography and exposes the links between all forms of sexual exploitation. Take it away, Adam.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Max. So as Max has mentioned, the project that we did this semester was for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. We're all going to abbreviate that long name by NCOSE, which is their official acronym for the rest of the presentation. But just to give a little bit more information, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation deals with addressing problems of pornography, specifically the violence. So specifically violence against women in pornography and also in prostitution, and then violence against children and child abuse. So I would like to start out by talking about account management. We each shared different roles over the course of the project, but we tried to divide up the responsibilities as clearly as possible so that whenever anything new came in, we would know who was responsible for it. So for myself, I feel like a natural point of departure is for the account management because I was the one who initially established contact with the client. And as I began speaking with them and started to find out what their needs were, I realized pretty quickly that they wanted to expand their reach to Spanish speakers within the United States, so the Latin American market, but also they were looking to expand as much as they could internationally. So we were able to offer help for French and Chinese, which are also languages that our team supports. And the content that we were going to focus on, at least in the beginning, was specifically for the web, because they have a really robust website that has many pages, a lot of content to help people with pornography, to help people become more aware of organizations that might be perpetuating problems with violence against women and children and sexual exploitation in general. So we began to talk about a strategy for translating that content, for translating specifically a landing page to begin with, and then other pages throughout their site. And as we discussed how to implement those translations and worked with our translators, our volunteer translators, we realized that we probably weren't going to be able to have as much bandwidth as we needed to complete as large a project as they were hoping for us to do. So we had to reassess our goals and discuss that with them. And I think later on when we give our demonstrations, it'll become clear that we were able to provide them with quite a bit of value, even in spite of not being able to continue with our strategy out the gate. But because we're talking about the roles that each of us played throughout this project, I'd like to turn some time over to my colleague Cooper so that he can talk about project management.
Hi, so I was our project manager, and my main responsibility was managing our relationships with each of our translators. We had translators in the 3 languages that Adam just mentioned, Spanish, French, and Chinese, and so I was in charge of onboarding them into how we'd like them to do things, and also answer any questions or manage any problems they might have. So for this project, we use Memsource, which is traditionally known as a CAT tool, but we were able to use it more as a translation management system, and that we were able to take advantage of some of its other functionality. We were able to use the email function that it had to contact translators, and we were also able to see when they had begun translating and also when they had finished. Based off of the word counts that we got from uploading our source files into Memsource, we were able to create quotes and POs, and then we use industry standards rates to charge our clients, even though in the end we actually zero all that out because this is just for a class project. So one of the main challenges I had in this role was actually securing translators. So all of our translators were volunteers, and they had other things they're doing in terms of school, or maybe they're professional translators, or maybe they're in other countries such as France. And so we had to work with several different translators based per project, and that posed as somewhat of a challenge. But the great thing was that we used Memsource, so we were able to keep all of our terminology and things like that consistent. So next I'm going to turn the stage over to Yanan, who was our engineer.
Hello, I act as a localization engineer for this project, and my routine job is to assess the source file and prepare the picture lists. The original plan was for me to migrate the website of the client to our host sites, but I tried two different sites, which is TLMdev and MidCreate, but the content wasn't showing properly. So we decided to switch our strategy a little bit to localizing the landing page. And we have the landing page localized into the 3 languages, and the engineer on the client side is working on incorporating that to the original site. Because we switch our plan a little bit, so my role switch a little bit to DTP later on in the second half of the project, and I'll have Haibin to talk more about DTP.
Thanks, Yana. So my primary role is DTP specialist, and I didn't expect my role was going to be this big because we changed our strategy from website localization to DTP localization. It kind of shifted weight towards DTP more. So thanks to my teammates, they took some of my workload, and we did banner localization, video localization, and brochure localization. And through all these sub-projects, we were able to use what we learned in class, such as Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, all the tools from Adobe Suite, and to apply them in a real-world setting. And we were really glad we did that. And now we're going to show you what we did for our client.
So the first aspect of our project that we'd like to demonstrate is actually the work that we did on the landing page. So we've discussed some of the difficulties that we had finding translators to help us translate this content. Fortunately, the landing page is fairly short. What you see right here on this English About page is basically the content that we translated for our localized landing pages. I would like to draw your attention to the what will be the upper right-hand corner of the screen, where you can see the Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube icons. Because the way that we would like to see this implemented, and I actually had to do a mock-up in Photoshop to show you what we'd like to see, is to have an international icon added up in that same area, and then what you'll see on the next screen is a mock-up of the drop-down menu that reflects the same format that comes from the rest of the native menus on the site. So on this page, as I've said, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see a globe icon that's been added, and when you click on the globe icon, what you will hopefully see is the different languages. Now, I'd like to explain that the reason that I made this mock-up and that this isn't actually a screenshot is that as Yanan kind of alluded to, there are some difficulties with migrating a WordPress website to another server when there are lots of plugins and different add-ons onto the site. And so, as we've been working with a third-party content management system that the NCOSE works with, we've been trying to have these things implemented, but we haven't quite resolved that yet, and so we're still working on it. But hopefully this gives you a good example of what we hope will be accomplished in the end. And so that's the landing page, and now Haibin is going to talk a little bit about some of the banners that we worked on for the client.
This is the email banner that I did for the client. and this banner is used in the email, so they can spread the message. So basically with this sub project, I use Illustrator. As you can see, the blue text there, I had a little trouble with that because it's really hard for me to have the same style, such as in the middle should be empty, but I had to spend a little bit extra on that. But other than that, it wasn't that difficult for me.
So I was working on this brochure. So the client picks this brochure because it lists all the harms that pornography does to the general public. So the localization of this brochure to different languages can best evangelize their what the organization is mission for. So my job was we managed to get a source file from the client, and which makes our job much more easier because I can just directly implement the changes in InDesign. So most of the work that I did was to find the right font, adjust the kerning and the leading, because there's the variation in the length of the translation for different languages. So now you can see it's the Chinese version of the brochure. And we also have the French version of the brochure. And there was a delay in Spanish translation, so I'm still working on it, but we'll have a Spanish version coming up very soon. Now Cooper will talk about the video we did.
So I worked on the subtitles for a video we did. So NCOSC asked us to do this video, which is on their Vimeo account, and this video is about the pornography epidemic. And in the video here, you can actually see the director of NCOSC, Miss Dawn Hawkins. So using a subtitle creation application called AgiSub, I was able to make a transcript of the actual English, and then we were able to export that transcript and have all of our translators translate that into their various languages. So here seeing a screenshot of the Spanish, and here's the French, and here's the Chinese. And so now we'd like to talk to you about some of the key things that we learned in this project.
So we're switching back and forth quite a bit, but I'd like to cover the first point here under our key learnings. So one of the things that became fairly clear fairly early was that well-defined roles and responsibilities can facilitate projects running more smoothly. And by that, I mean that even though there were many things for us to do with the client, sometimes one or another of us would have to take on extra work in a different realm of responsibility, but just having a direct line of communication both from the client to us, and in that sense the client typically contacted me with any of its needs, and then having a direct line of communication back from us, from the person who's responsible for a particular aspect of a project to the client, really helped us move smoothly throughout the project.
So the second point is about the WordPress. We were thinking that WordPress would be much easier to handle as it's a blog site for the general public, but apparently the multiple layers of plugins makes our data migration hell. So we wasn't managed to get that. So I guess it requires a lot more technical knowledge to get that done. And the other point we learned is about the source file. Having the source file does speed up our project a lot more because we don't have to recreate the source file. And it actually benefits the client as well, since it saves their cost on direct labor cost. Now I have Haibin to talk about
Visualization.
So another thing we learned in this project was the balance of expectations, and this went two ways. So this went between the client and us, and also us and our translators. So in the beginning, our client wanted us to localize a lot of their web page, and We would have loved to have done that. However, there's only 4 of us, and we also had to, go to extreme lengths to find our translators. So that expectation wasn't realistic, and so we had to reevaluate and come up with a new strategy to still give our client a good experience and create value for them. Another thing was the relationship between us and our translators. So like I mentioned before, we had difficulty in securing translators, and even when we secured them, we didn't want to overwork them. So we had to strike a balance in terms of how much content we wanted to give them and that they would feel comfortable translating. And so the last point I want to touch on is that TLM students can provide a lot of value. So in this program, we learn all about localization, and we get to try out different things in different classes. But this final Practicum course was an opportunity for us to put all these things together and give something back to the community that hopefully created value for them and was able to spread their message in multiple markets. And so we were glad that we were able to see all the stuff we learned in class come into the real world and actually be useful. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Next up, we have Kat King, who is going to talk about their client Mifan Mama, a China-based nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting orphans and blind children in rural areas in China.
Good morning, everyone. We are Kat King. I'm the project manager and reviewer, Monica, and today we also have Kay, the localization engineer, and also Lulu, the desktop publisher, and she is also our contact point with our client. And the client that we are working with is Mifan Mama. As Max just mentioned, it's a China-based organization that helps children in rural areas. And for this client, because all their founders are English speakers, so their website is in English and all their marketing materials are in English as well. And that is why for this project, the client asked us to localize their website into simplified Chinese and also 4 marketing videos into simplified Chinese as well. And first, let's take a look at the CAD tools that we have been using for this project. We use Memsource as the CAD tool because it's cloud-based. It's very useful when you have to try and communicate with our translator. And also, the machine translation component in Memsource also help us to accelerate the speed of translation. And here is a screenshot of Memsource, of our project in Memsource. Basically, we uploaded all the source HTML file into Memsource and also the picture list into Memsource and before the translation. And here is a screenshot of the translation interface of Memsource. As we can see, another very good thing about Memsource is that it displays all the tags in the HTML file very obviously, so that our translator can keep every tag in the right place. And we also, in our style guide, we also provide instructions for our translator to translate in Memsource. And another good thing about Memsource is that we can use the comment function so that whenever our translator has something to comment, they can use the comment function to communicate with us. And our translator Flora, who is also in the class, the best translator that we have ever met, use the comment function to give us a lot of great ideas. And she also helped us to build the term base. And now let's take a look at our organizational tools. And for the file share, because we are a small company with only 3 people, so we use the folder structures in Dropbox to share files, just to make sure that every file is the most up-to-date version. And also, another thing that we found very useful is the Google Spreadsheets workbook. We use the workbook to distribute the project into small tasks, and assign different tasks to different members, team members. And for each week, we make plans for each task and write down the most up-to-date progress for each task. And it's really helped us to keep everything on the right track. And now, Kay will talk about the localization workflow.
So I'm going to talk about some of the localized, to show you some of the website that we localized. So here you can see this is the original English web page, and there are a logo and banner on top of the page, and followed by a menu bar and a picture slide, and then the text. So here is the Chinese website. So you can see the format is completely the same as English website. And here are also some demonstrations. And we also have to make sure that the function works the same between English website and Chinese. And next I'm going to talk about our workflow of website localization project. So the first step is we have to assess the material, because for a website, there's not only text to be translated, there are also graphics and buttons that need to further go through desktop published. So you really have to go over the files and assess what needs to be translated. So for this Mifamama website, we have several HTML files and graphics that contain text. And once the files are being translated and the graphics are localized, we can begin to collect them as our target files and begin to build up our multilingual website. But here's when we start to meet some challenges, and we also have some solution to it that we'd like to share with you. So first of all, for your information, is our website is a static page. A static page, by definition, is a website that mainly consists of HTML pages with text and graphics that are manually updated. So as I mentioned, because a static page needs to be manually updated, so when we are trying to localize in the website, it also requires a lot of manual steps to duplicate the file structure. And this is the first challenge that we met. So there's actually several ways to do so, but as our website is rather small and the language is only for two, English and Chinese, so we found the easiest way to do so is to maintain several directories within the same domain and then named it with standard localization convention. So the English files would be put in the root directory, and Chinese would be placed in a directory named ZH. And you can see the as for index.html for English, for Chinese it would become like zh/index.html for the domain. And after building up the file structure, we have to create a language switcher for users to switch between languages. So here I'm using HTML to create the links and also CSS to make the format right. So here's the outcome of the language switcher. And the next challenge we are facing is there's a plugin that contains text within JavaScript that can not really be translated. So, and actually this kind of plugin is not really localization friendly. So the solution we are having for this problem is we use Unicode arrow to replace the text so that it's much more localization friendly. Another challenge is that we have some text that can be identified by cats in HTML files. So as you can see in the picture, there are some text that remains in English after translated. So the solution is we really have to like manually look into the code and to find and to replace the English with Chinese like manually. So the outcome is like this. And the last challenge we're facing after all of the challenges, we have to compile the whole file structure to a public-facing server so that our QA resource can perform in-context QA, because all of the updates on a static website will be local on my computer. So unless I upload it to a server, there's no way that our QA resources or our client can get into the website. But one thing that went pretty well is, as you can see in the picture, the Chinese, when translating from English into Chinese, when translating from English into Chinese, the text length is shorter than the original text. So we don't have to worry too much about resizing the text. So next we'll have Lulu to talk about our client communication.
One of my roles in this project was the contact, and we had a big challenge at the beginning of this project because we lost touch with our client for about 2 weeks. We thought we may have lost our client, but it turned out to be that it was Chinese New Year. They were all on vacation. So when we look back, it's a very small issue, but it's good to keep in mind about these steps, because if you are working with client or vendors from other countries or other culture, you might need to take these holidays into consideration when you are scheduling this project, because it might cause delay or other issues. My another rule was localizing the media part of this project. The client has 4 propaganda videos. They were made by different studios, and so they were in different styles. Some of them has the English subtitles, some of them has English dialogues, some of them has the Chinese dialogues. So after discussion, we decided to put bilingual subtitles on those videos, both English and Chinese. So their audience, no matter they are Chinese audience or English-speaking people, they can both understand and enjoy the videos. These are the screenshots of the subtitled videos. This is the one that has English subtitle itself, so for this one, we only put the Chinese subtitle on it. When I was doing the subtitling, I tried several softwares like AGSub, VisualSub Sync. These two are good software, but you need to download the videos first, because our clients' video are on YouTube. So I need to download them and import them into this software, making the subtitle and export the SRT and upload the SRT to the YouTube again. So it added extra work. Then I found that YouTube has its own creator studio, which you can make subtitles on right on the YouTube. Here is the interface. It's very easy to use. It's a great software, and you can check the effects anytime when you are working on the project. The best part is, if you need to embed the subtitle with the video for other use, you can just download the subtitle file as SRT or SBV, which are commonly used subtitle files. So it's a very good function. My another job, it was doing the DTP for the logos and pictures of this of the website. The original pictures we got from our client, some of them were in low resolution, so we recreated some of the logos to make them look better in the high resolution. And another challenge was this website contains a lot of pictures which the text was embedded with the picture, so it added the workload of DTP, and the gradient ramp added the difficulty of recreate those pictures. But by using the skills what we learned from the DTP course of Professor Max, these are not big deal. By doing this project, we practice what we learned through the 2 years localization courses, and we also learned something new by solving the problems we found in this project. And the best part is by localizing this website, more Chinese people can visit this website, and more people can get involved with helping the orphan children in China. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kat King. Next up, we have Team D. Emily, Wenting, Isabel, Minju, and Ben will discuss their localization project this semester for their 2 clients, Give to Asia and Sino Atlas. Give to Asia is a nonprofit that connects donors around the world with local organizations in Asia. Sino Atlas is a nonprofit that enables international organizations to provide water pollution solutions in China. All right, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. We are Team D, and today we'll talk about the projects we've done throughout the semester for Give to Asia and Sino Atlas, followed by our general experience. But before getting into the details, I'll introduce our team. We have Wendy, Ben, Emily, Isabel, and myself. We've been taking the role of project managers. This is our linguistic team. They were mostly second-year translation students, and we also had some students outside of MIS.
So the first client we would like to introduce to you is called Give to Asia. Give to Asia is a foundation that supports local organizations in Asia, and it connects local programs with donors over the world to create long-term connections and partnerships. During our collaboration with Give to Asia, we had a great start, and mainly that's because during our first of our email communications, our client gave very clear instructions as to what kind of files and what kind of assets they would like to be localized into which languages, and also more importantly, they told us who the potential audiences would be for those localized files, and in such a way we would know what kind of register, what kind of tone to use in our translation.
Okay, so here is our project scope. We have over 6,000 words in total, and the project types we have include a PDF brochure, a set of Word file for their user's guide, and 2 videos. So before everything started, after we got all the source assets from the client, we set up a rough timeline for the project we were going to do throughout the semester. And as you can see here, in our division of work, we tried to make sure that each of us will have the chance to switch roles and take turns to be PM, DTP specialists, engineers, and QA managers. We also further broke down the tasks for each project, and it's easier for us to keep track of the progress and better collaborate within the team. And the standard workflow is that our engineer will prep the file and launches the project in Memsource. Our PM will initiate the project without linguists, followed by TEP, DEP, and QA steps, and then we deliver the final files to the client. The first project we did for the client was a pilot brochure localization, and here are our source and target files. So in this pilot project, we paid special attention to quality control just to make sure that we were on the right track to meet the client's expectations. Our PM did in-house additional QA step, and we provided feedback to the linguists, both in Memsource's comment section and offline. We also circulated our translation to the client, asking for their feedback and review. During the translation, we found that there might be a small typo in the source, so we reached out to the client asking for their confirmation before we make any changes on our end. So at last we delivered the correct translation. In addition to translation, we also noticed that there was a place in the footer that the the formatting of the phone number needed to be localized to follow the country convention in China. But at first, we were not able to edit the text, which turned out to be an embedded image. So we reached out to the client again, asking for the editable text, and here's what we have in the final delivery. So after the pilot project, the client gave us very positive feedback regarding our professionalism and our attention to details. So we just went down. The second project we did for Give to Asia was localizing their user's guide. This project had a very large volume with 8 file in total, amounting to over 5,000 words. So we were facing a very tight turnaround time, and the content is highly technical relating to the tax policy and some financial obligations in the US. So our approach was to first of all divide all the source assets into 2 batches and put into production on a rolling basis, so that we wouldn't need to wait until all the translation was done and rush the rest of the work in the last minute. The other approach we took was to adapt simplified Chinese translation for Taiwan. What that means is that we didn't have the traditional Chinese translated from scratch, but rather have our linguists to edit the simplified Chinese translation to accommodate the language style and cultural nuances in Taiwan. By doing that, we were able to reduce our cost and also save time. So at last, we managed to meet the turnaround time without sacrificing the quality.
And the third project we did for Give to Asia is video localization. So first, let's take a look at a short clip of the localized video.
Asia is home to nearly 2/3 of the world's population. And while many of these people's futures are bright, hundreds of millions still live on less than $2 a day.
So for the video project, apart from regular translation editing process, we also have an on-screen QA process in our workflow. So basically, there is a source video file, and then also separate subtitle files we generated from the subtitling software. And then for the on-screen QA, we use VLC, which is like a media player. We can simply drag the subtitle file into VLC, and it will recognize the subtitle automatically, so that we can see how the translation looks on screen. And sometimes we may need to change the line break or do other adjustments for a better look. We have 2 videos in the video project. One is a 3-minute longer version. Another is a 90-second shorter version. So we did the translation for the longer version first, and then when it comes to the shorter one, we can simply auto-populate the translations that have already been stored in our translation memory. So the translation editing for the shorter one is really fast, and we can get to the on-screen QA part really fast. But when it comes to deliver the translations back to client, we realize that since we don't know what kind of software the client will be using to play the video, we can just simply send them the subtitle file. But on the other hand, we don't want to embed the subtitle into the video directly, because if the client wants to make any changes to the translation, it would take much longer for us to edit the subtitle file first and then reburn the subtitles into the video. So what we came up with is to upload the source video first from our personal account onto Vimeo, which is the platform the client was using to publish their videos. And then in the advanced setting of Vimeo, we upload the subtitle files, and we enable both simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, so that this is the interface the client will be seeing. They can see the translation in the video and switch between languages really fast. So these are the projects we did with Give to Asia, and now we would like to introduce our second client.
Our second client is Give to Asia. As Max has introduced, Give to Asia is a platform. SinoAtlas is a platform that's created by several Duke's graduate students in partner with a Singapore business. Their goal is to provide information for stakeholders in China to tackle water pollution issues. And their goal, they wanted us to localize their English website into simplified Chinese so that they can reach more audience in China. They actually reached us a year ago in April 2015, asking us for localization advice and do a basic localizability check. The most important advice we gave them back then was to change their content management system from Wix.com to WordPress because it is a more localization-friendly platform. They officially became our client several months ago when we started this Practicum class, and the most unique thing we did before we actually started production was to look at their web analytics tool, and we figured out what are the most visited pages across their site and prioritized those pages in our projects.
All right, so next I want to go over the statement of work that we did for them. So as Wenting said earlier, we localized the entirety of their website, which consisted of 15 web pages and a total word count of over 4,000 words. And this also included 5 images with text embedded inside of it, so that required DTP. We also provided English review check step that occurred before translation began. Now this had 3 benefits. The first was that we were able to maximize the professionalism of the English by going over it, checking it, and making changes when necessary or possible. The second is that because we were already going over the English websites, we were able to simultaneously create a glossary of important terms and translate that into simplified Chinese, and thus create a bilingual glossary for our translators to use. The third benefit is that we are also able to identify potential translation problems before translation even occurred and come up with solutions for those problems, or tell translators ahead of time so that they knew how to deal with them. And this enabled us to streamline translation and reduce the time it took to translate. This is the main page of the Sino-Atlas website in English, and here is the translated version. And this is an example of an image that we DTP'd from English into Chinese. And this is an example of a more text-heavy page that they had and our translation. Now, in addition to using WordPress, our client also used a unique feature called Fusion Builder that allowed them to really create a website that had a lot more style and more unique formatting. And this provided a unique challenge to us in 2 ways. The first is that Fusion Builder produces Fusion Builder unique code and format that isn't actually compatible with traditional CAT tools. And so we resolved this problem by creating a filter that would filter out code, Fusion Builder unique code, and provide only the translatable text for translators to translate. And after translators translate this text, the translation is put back into the code without changing the parts that should not be changed. The second challenge was that Fusion Builder is not compatible with more typical localization plugins for WordPress, such as WPML. Okay.
So since it's a website localization project, what we did, we also created a test plan for our client and also compiled a bug report. Here's an example of the bug reports, most of the issues were layout issues, and since we have access to their content management system, we could just go in and fix those bugs by ourselves. But there are some issues that we cannot fix, so we escalated them to the client, and they gave us feedback. Some of them are actually not issues for them, so we just left them there. And some of the issues were more difficult ones, and they were actually assigned to the client engineer, and their engineer would be responsible for fixing it. And this bug report provided us with a channel to cooperate with our client even more closely. So one question we've been asking ourselves is that, are we actually helping the client? Is our localization service providing value for them? And fortunately, we did get the answer. This is the data we got for their January visits of their entire website. This is when they first launched their English website. We can see that they only got 35 visits and 108 page views. The average session duration was less than 4 minutes. And this is the most recent data we got from their web analytics tool. And we can see that the page views are now at 634 for the 30 days. And the average session duration increased to more than 15 minutes. So so the total visits increased by 200%, the total page visits increased by 600%, and the average session duration increased by 500%. So, and the other standard was that at first, all of the most visited pages were in English because there's no Chinese. And after localizing their entire website, this is the data from April, and we can see that 7 of the 10 most visited web pages are Chinese pages. So we would like to say that our Chinese localization is actually helping the client to reach more audience. And we were also very happy to see the client give us very positive feedback. They think us as professional and prompt, and they would recommend our services to other organizations. And we are very happy that they are happy about our services. And Mingju is going to share some of the general experiences.
So aside from our experience with project management, we also had the opportunity to use various tools. For our CAT tool, we used Memsource, and this was because most of our team members had previous work experience with this tool, and since it's a cloud-based and user-friendly tool, we thought that our linguists would feel most convenient. Also, for our folder structure, we use Google Drive to store all our files, and we use Photoshop for our DTP tasks and Visual Subsync for subtitling our videos. We had active communication going on internally and also with our clients and with the translators. We used folder structures and project schedules and project trackers to keep track of our time and progress in the projects. And we also had a 24/7 running group chat. For our clients, we simplified the communication process with having one lead contact per client. So Emily was the lead contact for Give to Asia, and Wendy was the lead contact for Sino-Atlas. For our translators, we opened up a discussion forum in case they had questions with the translations. And in our request emails, we also sent style guides as well as instructions for Memsource. This is a screenshot of our project schedule that I mentioned previously, and this is the project tracker. To thank our linguists for their participation, we sent out a certificate of participation after the project. And especially for our clients that were based in, our translators based in China, they were very interested about localization and about our projects. So we put together a document explaining some concepts of localization and the workflow. We also had a couple of team building events which involved a lot of food. We had an invaluable experience throughout the semester, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank our clients and our linguists to help us get us to where we are today. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Next up, Sierra, John, Paola, Roberto, and Vianney, the core members of MundoLoc, MundoLoc, will discuss the various localization projects conducted throughout the semester for Loaves, Fishes, and Computers, or LFC. They're a Salinas, California-based nonprofit computer shop dedicated to providing low-cost computers to Monterey County communities. So take it away.
Good morning, everyone. We are MundoLoc, and we'd like to tell you about the projects we did this semester, but first let me introduce our team. We are a 5-member team, we all speak Spanish, and despite our different backgrounds, we all have one thing in common. We're all enthusiastic about localization. And now Paola would like to tell you about our team of translators and editors that helped us with our projects.
Yeah, our translators and editors were mostly Miss first-year students from the Spanish T&I program, but we also got the opportunity to work with 2 Twitter volunteer translators from Venezuela. So this team helped us to make our client content accessible to the Spanish community in the Monterey County.
So who is Los Fishes and Computers, or LFC? LFC takes donated computer equipment. It trains volunteers to refurbish these computers and provide them to in-need residents of the Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz County. They're a nonprofit organization in Salinas, and they serve an average of 174 low-income clients per month and distribute approximately 40 computers a month as well. They've also won the Human Services Nonprofit of the Year and the Community Service Award. So our length of our service was approximately 87 days, and we kicked it off with a meeting with our client in Salinas, California on February 3rd. The majority of the work was document localization. However, we also did subtitle a video for them as an extra project, and my colleague Paola would be telling you about that later. We terminated our services on April 30th, 2016. We will talk about why I made this funky little hand gesture here later. And now my colleague John will tell you about the tools we use to localize all of these documents.
Thank you. And so as Vianney said, the majority of our projects were document translations. So we did use Memsource Cloud to handle as our TMS. And so that was a free tool that was very helpful in managing the translation process. And then internally we used Basecamp as our own sort of project management tool. We did have some InDesign file, one InDesign file, and for our bonus project we used Agisub for the video subtitle localization. So now we'll talk about the different workflows that we use for different projects.
Thank you, John. All right, so I'm going to describe the typical workflow for the documents that we translated. And as John mentioned, he described the tools that we used. So what would happen is that John is our account manager. So he would receive the files from the clients. So he would upload them onto Basecamp. And then the assigned project manager would go into Basecamp, take the file, go into Memsource Cloud, upload the file, create the project, upload our assets or our translation memories or glossaries, contact the linguist assigned for that project to begin translation. Then the linguist would go in, translate the file. The editor would then be notified. The editor will go into Memsource, edit the file, and that would notify us that it would be complete. So the project manager would then pass it on to DTP, and that would usually be VNA or CETA. And they used Pages and InDesign to complete the DTP, who would do an internal final review, send it off to the client for a client review, get some feedback, incorporate that feedback, and then do a final delivery. For the video, however, that was a little bit different. We did not receive the source file directly. We actually had to go into the client's website, extract the video file, then create the transcript by hand, then edit the transcript into English, go into Memsource, create the project in Memsource, go through the whole motion, translation, editing, proofreading, and then instead of doing DTP, we did QA. So we did the QA once that the Spanish subtitles were embedded. We did an internal final review, and we delivered it. Instead of delivering it to a client, we did an internal delivery back to Basecamp. And now I'm going to pass it up to Paola.
Thank you, Roberto. In terms of the assets, we localize into Mexican and Latin American Spanish a variety of documents, including a handbook, a flyer, a waiver, a brochure, and also a VTO, which was a proof of concept project. Now, each of us are going to talk about these documents.
So the first project we did was their volunteer handbook. Now, due to the LFC's location, most of their volunteers are primarily Spanish speakers with limited English skills, so the volunteer handbook was their highest priority. And this is an 8-page document, which isn't terribly long, but we didn't want to overwhelm our volunteer translators, so we separated it into 3 sections. And luckily, there was an easy page break where the content didn't flow into the next page, so it's easy to just cut into 3 sections. The last section is the release of liability waiver, which Roberto will touch upon a little later. Now, we did hit a small bump on the road. Just briefly want to mention that we did not have the original fonts to begin with, but during the translation editing stage, we found the fonts, we installed them, and then we were able to do proper DTP after we received the files. In the end, we did receive client review, which was really great, and the client decided to go for informal tú instead of formal usted. So with just a few quick changes, our first project ended very nicely. Now Vianney will tell you about our second project.
So our second project was the generic LFC flyer. This document was a total of 5 pages. 2 pages look similar to the ones on your left, and 3 were similar to the ones on your right. The document was a Pages document, and when we saw the testimonial page that you see right there, we immediately asked, how are we going to tackle this? The LFC wanted the Spanish form to look as if it were handwritten, just as it looks here. So one of the first things we did is ask them if they had the questionnaire or the questions here already translated in Spanish. But there was a minor issue. This is what they sent us. And maybe you can read Spanish or so, but there's a lot of spelling errors, grammar errors. There's also the inconsistent use of formal and informal you. It is not the same formatting as the English questionnaire. For example, it's missing the checkboxes, there's indentation issues, commas and periods where they're not supposed to be, etc. So this is our final delivery. What we decided to do was translate and recreate the source testimonial form on Microsoft Word. We typed each answer to the question using a font that looks like handwriting, so we wouldn't have to handwrite it ourselves. We took a screenshot and paste and resize everything because the text did expand a bit. I think I moved the font a bit and also did some resizing on the boxes. Now, Roberto will talk to you about our third project, the release of liability waiver.
Thank you, Vianney. And as you all can see, this is not a very lengthy document. However, it is a liability waiver, and we needed somebody with legal expertise. So we were pretty excited that we had a translator with legal background initially on board. However, due to some constraints, she was unable to participate, so we were left looking for a different translator. We were able to find another one who completed the translation and ended up doing we ended up completing the project without a hitch, so that was good. And now I will pass it on to John.
And the last project that we got was an InDesign file, and we were excited because it was a little more fun or interesting than maybe just a Word file. But it did come with some extra little challenges. This is it's a brochure, and this is the English source. There were various different source files actually sent to us during this process, but this was essentially one of the final versions. So the DTP on this was interesting. There were some missing fonts that could not be very easily found or downloaded for free. And of course, to fit everything onto the one page was also a challenge because Spanish actually expands compared to the English quite a bit. So we found some creative ways to sort of, truncate the Spanish to make sure that things fit. And there were some image swaps, and ultimately, because we didn't have all of the fonts, it wasn't reflected. The formatting is not quite reflected in this particular screenshot, but the client was able to address that issue fairly easily on their end because they did have the proper fonts. So we'll talk more about this. We'll retouch this later on. And now we will discuss the YouTube bonus project that we did for the client, which is exciting.
Thank you, John. As previously mentioned, we decided to localize a video, and we chose this particular video as it is one of the first things you see when you open our client's homepage. We noticed also that they were using YouTube automatic subtitles, which created funky translations. Let me show you some examples. For instance, the YouTube subtitles do not distinguish speakers from each other when speaking almost at the same time, which in turn created a funny robotic-like speech. This says literally, Garcia hopes work for a big tech company someday. They will give me good job and I... So that maybe not as bad, but it's still understandable. But however, what happens with the translation is so bad that it is even funny. I mean, in these subtitles, YouTube automatically translated our client's name, which is Loaves, Fishes, and Computers. And here it says, the mother of 2 sons until she came here, 2 breads and fishes, the computers were outside. So in our localized video version, we make sure to distinguish between speakers by using italics,
to work for a major
and also
tech
to not
company someday.
translate
Give me
the
a good
name of our
job,
client.
and so I can be a good role model for my kids. It was a dream that seemed impossible for the mother of
Now
2
Sarah
until
is
she
going
came
to talk
here.
about what did not go so well in this project.
Thank you. So, not every project is without its little mistakes. When we first started with the volunteer handbook and the volunteer flyer, we ran into some formatting issues. Both of these documents were originally created in Pages, and Pages can export a Word document. But when we tried using Word in the actual Word document, you can see on the left-hand side, we open it in Word, and LFC became horizontally oriented instead of vertically, so we lost the C for LFC. And then we tried opening in Pages, the same document, and we lost the right-hand column. So we were just having all these issues. So we requested from the client that he send us the original Pages document. And once that came, it was really easy to just extract all the text because they use text boxes everywhere. But it also kept the formatting so that when we put in the Spanish, it kept the same font size and the same colors. So then that became easier in the end. Now John would like to tell you about missing fonts.
And as I had previously mentioned, we were getting various versions of source files from the client with missing fonts and different text and different pictures. So we started to work on one, and then they had changed some things and given us another version, and so it sort of made the process take a little bit longer, and there was a little bit of back and forth. But ultimately, without being able to have the fonts, we did the best we could on our end with the content, and then it was up to the client to change the font. And other opportunities that we saw for improvement would be the client did sort of go back and forth over whether or not they were expecting the formal or informal tone for their materials, and were not always timely for client review feedback or source file handoff. Of course, internally we had some inconsistency with translator availability, but we were able to work around that. After our deadline that we had set for the end of the month, there were still some misunderstandings and miscommunications, and so we are still trying to work with the client to wrap up with that final brochure. But we think that the ultimate goal of helping the community is what we should focus on. So, however, not all is lost. There were other things that did go well in this process.
All right, thank you, John. All right, so despite all the challenges that we faced, a lot of things went really well. First of all was the client-agency relationship. So we built a very good relationship with the client throughout the semester. We had great communication. They were very responsive, and they trusted us with the work that we were doing, which was very nice. Internally, the MundoLoc team also meshed very well together. We also had great communication. Everybody put in a lot of work, and when somebody wasn't able to do something, somebody else picked up the slack, and we were all just very supportive of each other. So some of the challenges actually helped create opportunities for evangelization. So we were able to teach a client some of the best practices for localization, especially regarding the fonts and DTP. But it also allowed us to help them talk about different workflows and things that they could do in the future for localization projects with other vendors. So sort of doing kind of like an offboarding evangelization mix. And we were also able to complete all of the localization projects on time, which was very good. It allowed for plenty of time to get feedback and address any other concerns that the client had. So yeah, it was a very good project, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, MundoLoc. Last but not least, Transcend. Nick, Stephanie, Flora, Jessica, and Echo will showcase the projects they have done for their two clients, Friends of Hearst Castle and the Tyler Robinson Foundation. Friends of Hearst Castle is a nonprofit organization behind the world-famous Hearst Castle. TRF, based in Utah, is a nonprofit organization with the mission to slay cancer with dragons. So take it away, Transcend.
Hello everyone, we are Transcend. We are a localization company based in Monterey. We have 5 members in our team. The first is Stephanie, who is our project coordinator. She's not only making sure that our meetings, she's kind of like a liaison of our team. She's not only making sure that our meetings follow agenda and we are clear of our assignments, she's also the major project manager who's in charge of the projects of Tyler Robinson Foundation. And we have Flora, our vendor manager. She helps us recruit brilliant translators and also educate translators about our workflow and the CAD tools we use and also our terminology. And Echo, our project manager, she looks at the big picture of our projects and making sure that all the projects proceed smoothly and also completely. She is also the project manager for Hearst Castle's projects. And that is me. I am the engineer and the DPP specialist. I troubleshoot all the issues with our CAD tools and also draft the landing page for our client's Hearst Castle. Last but not least, we have Nick, our account manager and also audio engineer. He brought us 2 amazing clients, Friends of Hearst Castle and also Tyler Robinson Foundation, and he also created the audio guides for Hearst Castle. Basically, we have 5 kinds of service. The first is website localization, and the second is audio production, and we have document translation service, and the last one is localization consulting. We will cover more details later. Now, Echo will introduce our first client, Friends of Hearst Castle.
Hi, I'm Echo. So Friends of Hearst Castle is the nonprofit organization behind Hearst Castle. So Hearst Castle was once owned by a newspaper titan, William of Hearst, and it is his mansion where he showcases his artworks. And now the mansion is donated to the state of California, and it is recognized as the state historic landmark. So Friends of Hearst Castle, the mission behind Friends of Hearst Castle is to preserve the artifacts within Hearst Castle and supports education outreach programs for students, so they get a chance to actually see these art collections in person. And the first projects that we did for Hearst Castle was the bus audio narration. The original narration was done by Alex Trebek, which is the host of Jeopardy! So the bus audio actually plays in this tour bus you see on the slides, where tourists take the bus from the visitor center to go uphill where Hearst Castle is actually located. It is a 15-minute uphill and a 15 downhill ride, so the total length of recording is around 30 minutes. And so the word count from the original transcript is about 1,500 words. And we recorded our script in Mandarin Chinese. So I know people will be like, okay, so there's simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, and what's Mandarin Chinese? Well, simplified traditional is the label for the writing system, but Mandarin Chinese is the name we give in spoken Chinese. So, and also the CAT tool that we use is MakeCat, and we use it not only as an online translation tool, but also as our translation management system. And our workflow, as you can see, is as follows. Our account manager, Nick, received a file from the client, and our engineer, Jessica, she preps the file and analyzes the scope. And project manager, which is me, I send the translation off to our translators, and then we do a two-step review. We do this because first we send a review to our voice talent, who is Yao Rong, she's here, Lulu, she's our artist, and we want the translation to sound natural when it's read out loud, so that's why we have her to do the external review. And also we have an internal review, which is done by us. We wanted to make sure that all the translations match the style guide and the glossaries that we provided. And after that is done, we sent the audio for recording. We sent the transcript for audio recording. And our recording artist is Lulu Yao Rong. She has been a professional dubbing artist in China for over 6 years. And also Heng Wu, who's also in this class, and he has been a TV show host back in China. So we're very excited to have them on board. And my colleague Nick will talk about how we processed our audio engineering.
Great, thank you, Echo. So you may be wondering how an English speaker like me manages a recording session in Chinese. My language, B language, is Russian actually. I don't actually speak any Chinese. What we did was we translated our script and we created a bilingual script where I could see in English and in Chinese, and we assigned a number to each paragraph. We were lucky to have some professional equipment, most notably the Neumann TLM67 microphone, aptly named for our program. This microphone existed long before our program did, but it's a great microphone to use. We selected Pro Tools. As an audio engineer, I was able to use Pro Tools in my previous work as a post-production audio engineer at an international television broadcast studio. We also utilized the plugins of Renaissance Waves Gold and Isotope RX. So now I have a chance to show you a little bit of the techniques that we used in order to clean up the audio and make it sound really professional. So first of all, we organized our session with a marker for each paragraph, and we had multiple tracks for multiple takes. As you can see, our voiceover artists were excellent, and there were only a couple spots where we had to do multiple takes. Most of them, they hit it spot on the first time. We separated it into sections so that I could look at the session and know exactly what was being said as I compared it with the transcript. We focused on tight editing for a clean professional sound. This means taking out spaces where there are silence or breath between sentences. So this is what it looks like after you do editing. Now, sometimes in audio you have pops and clicks and mouth noises that can sometimes be distracting to the listener. And that's what it looks like in the waveform, where you have a little anomaly in the waveform. So you can edit these out manually, like so. We also used some automated techniques, such as the Isotope RX Studio, where those pops and clicks are edited out automatically. Now, in a lot of audio recordings where you have music and voiceover, you'll notice that the music ducks under the audio. So we used volume automation to have this ducking effect. We used appropriate equalization and compression plugins to improve the vocal quality. This makes sure that the vocal sound is appropriate for the content and that the volume matches. We used the Waves WLM loudness meter to measure the loudness of the source content. You can see that the loudness of this is -20 LKFS, which is -20 loudness units K-weighted full scale, which is basically a way to measure the loudness of digital audio. So after we measured this, we were able to match our recording loudness to the source loudness. And on the post end, we mastered the overall track and matched the overall volume levels. So I'd like to share with you a little sample here of what we did. What you're about to hear is 1 minute of audio. You'll hear about 20 seconds of Alex Trebek. You'll hear 20 seconds of Yarong, and then 20 seconds of Hang.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Trebek, and on behalf of California State Parks, I would like to welcome you to Hearst San Simeon State Historical Monument, better known as Hearst Castle.
欢迎各位来到赫斯特圣西蒙州立历史遗址，也就是大家熟知的赫氏古堡。在导览开始前，敬请大家配合以下规则：行驶过程中，请勿站立，勿将头手伸出窗外，
请将手机转为静音。若要丢弃垃圾，稍后在下车处会有垃圾桶。在车内及游览过程中，可饮用瓶装水，但请勿饮食及嚼食口香糖。感谢您协助维护这个美丽的园区。
Great. So now our audio deliverables consisted of a cumulative length of about 8 hours. This means that we delivered the full audio for both the uphill and downhill for both Heng and Yarong. And we also delivered it in several file formats: WAV, uncompressed, and MP3 is a compressed version. So now I'll turn it over to Jessica to discuss our second project for Hearst Castle, website localization.
Well, as you can see, this is the existing landing page of the Hearst Castle's website, and it was created by WordPress. Well, from our conversations with the client, we learned that they are going to have an overhaul of their website, so we provide our suggestions and ideas using HTML to demonstrate that. Well, this is an endeavor that was accomplished by all of our members. This is the workflow. We first come together and gather English content throughout the website, the whole website, and see what we should include in the landing page. And then we send our ideas to a client to get approval. And it was sent by our account manager, Nick. And then I built the English landing page using HTML and also created a landing page in simplified Chinese and also traditional Chinese. And before it was translated in Chinese, traditional Chinese and English Chinese, our project manager Echo sent it to our translators to translate them. And the final step is to build localized pages in traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese. This is our English landing page. As you can see that the whole page is very long, but we put all the main content into the main screen, so the visitors don't need to scroll down to the page to see the main content. And this is the simplified Chinese version, just give you a feel of it. The structure is exactly the same as the English one. It's just that the text, that in Chinese, the text is a bit shorter than English. So when I do the CSS, I adjusted the margins and also the margins between different parts, making sure that the same layout can be suitable into the simplified Chinese version. And Nick will gonna introduce our second client, Tyler Robinson Foundation.
Thank you, Jessica. So as the account manager, I knew our contact from the Tyler Robinson Foundation long before the Tyler Robinson Foundation even existed. Let me introduce you to my childhood friend, Jesse Robinson. Several years ago, Jesse lost his younger brother, Tyler, to childhood cancer. It was a difficult experience for the family. Jesse wanted to raise awareness of childhood cancer, but found that raising awareness just wasn't enough. So in September of 2015, he decided to act. Jesse started what's called Project CanCo. What is that, you may ask? Project CanCo is a 1,500-mile bike ride from Canada to Mexico, visiting 10 childhood cancer families, giving them $100,000 in total. Last fall, Jesse and his friend Jeff Steenblick visited families whose children have been afflicted with cancer, giving them financial and emotional support. Because Jesse's experience with cancer is personal, he is able to come to the rescue of other families that are struggling through the same trial. Project CanCo is how Jesse turns outward in service to others. So the first project that we did for them involves TRF's granting process. There's a process that the families who receive aid need to go through in order to receive that financial aid. And it involves filling out documents that enable them to receive those grants. So Flora's going to talk more about the process we use to translate these documents.
Thank you, Nick. So when translating those grant documents, which will be used by the families who will be receiving grants, first of all, our account manager receives the files from the client, and our engineer generate glossary using Okapi Rainbow. And our project manager drafted a style guide, and together with a glossary, she sent them for translation, editing, and proofreading. And after all that is done, the file is passed to engineer to do the desktop publishing. And this is the Spanish version of our grant document, and this is the French version. We did tell our client that the legal terms in the English version do not apply in France if he will use the French version in France. And as for the Spanish version, it is aimed to the Spanish-speaking families in the States, so we don't have the issue with that. And next, Stephanie will talk about our localization consulting project.
Thank you, Flora. Thank you, Flora. With Tyler Robinson Foundation, we've been doing two projects with them. One is the localization consulting project, and the other is grant application, like Flora just mentioned. For the purpose of the localization consulting project is that after we graduate, we won't be able to help them. So we came together a 10-page report. It serves as a roadmap for them to achieve their localization and translation objectives. Tyler Robinson Foundation is starting a CanCo East Coast campaign. The idea of the campaign is they will complete a 2,200-mile tour from Niagara Falls all the way down to Florida Keys, and they will give a grant for family that needs the financial aid up to the total amount of the grant is $100,000, and they will go international. They will go to Europe. They will go to Europe next year in 2017. It's called the Kenko Europe campaign, and they will also give out grants to family that need their help. $20,000 for each family. So in this report, we talked about pretty much, we shared everything we need to know and what they need to know for this dedicated communication staff if they are to start a translation or localization project. First, we talked about business goals, how translation and localization can fit and help them achieve their business goals. And then we walk them through the types of translation. There are website localization, software localization, document translation, and what they need to know about working on these types of translation projects. And then we also mentioned other services, for example, on global SEO, which is global search engine optimization that can help them enhance their global presence. And then next, we talked about how to implement a project. We walk them through the entire life cycle of a project, starting from identifying scope and how they can track progress, how they evaluate the quality of the deliverables. And we also mentioned technology. And since they're a nonprofit organization, I think it's important for them to know what free tools and resources are out there so they can utilize to help them reduce their cost. And then we also talked about operational models. We compared the pros and cons and the efforts and they need to invest in if they're hiring a language service provider or if they're hiring freelance translators or if they're going with community translation. And this is a quick look of the report that we put together for them. It's very detailed. And now back to Flora. She will talk about the challenges that we overcame.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we encountered several categories of challenges. First is about finding the most effective communication channels. We experienced some back and forth in trying to decide the most effective communication channel. We used Facebook Messenger, Basecamp, Google Drive, and emails. And lastly, we decided that Basecamp is our major communication channel because it can send emails to all the team members. It has the calendar function, and it will give us reminders when the event is approaching. Also, it will link to Google Drive, where we store all our project assets. And next challenge is about cat tool function. It poses two challenges to us. First is about job link. When we used split job function on MateCat, and each project, so this project will split, so this function will split one project into individual projects, and each project will have an individual link, and the translators click on the link. It's supposed to lead to the individual project that the translator is assigned to. However, our translators found that when click on the job link, all the job links lead to one same project. And lastly, we solved this issue by asking the translators to copy and paste the link to the web browser and open up directly from the web browser. that solved the problem. And another challenge posed by CATtool is about uploading glossary. Our engineer found that sometimes she is unable to upload the glossary, and she needs to change the encoding at different points in order to upload it. And the methods provided by MateCat do not work well all the time. And lastly, the challenge is with sourcing translators. We found it challenging to find native French speakers as translators. First, at the beginning of the project, we approached the only native French speaker in our TI program, and she already had too many projects, so she couldn't help us. So we solicited help from the class, and Professor Max Troyer, Adam Youngfield, and Sun Chang all give us advice and provided leads. And lastly, we went back to the native French speaker and asked her to proofread instead of translate, and she kindly agreed. So this challenge was overcome at last. And lastly, I want to express my gratitude to Professor Max Troyer for teaching us all the skills we need for completing this project. We'd like to thank all our translators, proofreaders, and reviewers for their contribution. And last but not least, thank my teammates for your input and contributions. And we look forward to more learning experiences in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Flora, and thanks, Transcend. If you liked what you heard today and would like to learn more about the Translation and Localization Management Program, you can visit us on the web, go.mis.edu/TLM. Thank you.